Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Poland's arms industry is expanding at record speed in 2025, driven by hard security realities on Europe's eastern flank. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has transformed defence planning, while growing uncertainty over long-term US commitment to NATO is pushing European states to rely more on their own capabilities. Poland has responded with a sharply increased defence budget and ambitious procurement plans. Joining us is Zuzanna Jurek, defence correspondent at TVP World, to break down what this surge means for Poland's industry, military readiness and regional security. Zuzanna, welcome to the programme and thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me on.
And a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thanks. All right. So Poland's budget was 4.1%, defence budget was 4.1% of GDP at the beginning of 2025 and went up to 4.7%. So it's quite a leap in a single year. What was triggering that, or what has triggered that leap?
I mean, this represents a continuation of concentrated effort by Poland to significantly ramp up its defence spending, as you said. Poland, as a frontline state, is acutely aware of the threat coming from Russia. It has obviously, over the course of its history, been subjugated to multiple invasions from Russia. So it's always been at the back of Poland's mind that the threat remains there and it is going to be there. And the full-scale war in Ukraine has kind of brought that forward again. But it's also part of the Allied commitments, back in June during the Hague summit of the NATO member states, the 32 NATO member states, they've agreed on new defence spending caps, so moving from 2% of GDP to 5% of GDP. So now all the NATO member states are required to continuously ramp up their defence spending as part of these Allied commitments.
Right, well, it was 2% not so long ago, 2% of GDP, but and many, if not most, NATO member states didn't even meet that cap. Generally speaking, before we come back to Poland, as far as you're aware, are other countries also kind of getting close to 5% like Poland is?
The frontline states, once again, are, the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, are very much so going towards that as well. Lithuania, I think, is around 4.5% right now.
Okay.
Estonia, similarly, I think 4.5%. So it's primarily the frontline states which are more acutely aware of the fact that they need to push for that, whereas there is a slightly more hesitancy in Southern Europe, for example. So Spain was actually one of the countries which was refusing to, agree to this new pledge. They obviously pushed it through anyway, but yeah, I think it's primarily the countries closest to Russia.
Who feel the greatest threat?
Yes,
basically.
Precisely.
Okay, so it's going up and it's moving towards the 5% minimum that NATO has been set for NATO countries. What's the money being spent on, Zuzanna?
Well, so Poland has multiple different priorities. I think one of the key ones over the last couple of years, since 2022 specifically, has been air defense systems. So Poland has kind of 3-layered air defense systems, which it's continuing to develop. These are huge air defense systems. This includes Patriot, US-supplied Patriot missile batteries, for example, and additional capabilities as well. But over the course of this year, actually, we've, had significant progress, for example, in our naval capabilities. So one of the flagship projects or flagship purchases, which we've managed to complete after decades of mismanagement and delays, has been the Orca or the Killer Whale program, and that is for the purchase of 3 submarines. We've selected back in November Sweden's Saab, to supply 3 submarines, and they are due to be delivered. The timelines are kind of uncertain as of right now, but we know that we're supposed to get a so-called gap filler, and that is going to be a smaller submarine that our Navy will be able to train with as early as next year. So in 2026, we can expect that some of Polish Navy will actually...
This year, actually.
Well, this year, exactly.
Yeah.
So we can expect that some of Polish Navy will actually travel to Sweden and start training in Sweden on this gap filler, and then it will come to Polish Baltic coastline in 2027.
OK, now I want to talk about the submarines in just a second. Just going back to the air defence, we've seen in Ukraine, for example, the huge role that drones are playing in the air war and the defence systems that Ukraine has developed, to counter attacks from drones. Is part of what Poland is buying protection against drone attack?
Yes, well, actually, Poland is producing a lot of its own, or it's expected to produce a lot of its drone capabilities domestically.
Okay.
So this is one of the sectors.
Drone defence.
Drone defense, drone interceptors, all of the above. This is one of the few niches that Poland has actually performed really well in. We have an industry leader, a European industry leader called WB Group. They've been producing in Ukraine, they've been producing in Poland. They're actually one of the companies which is also expected to be of significant interest for other European countries in the years to come. But yes, so in the next year, over the course of this year, Poland is expected to roll out the initiation of its drone wall, and WB Group, for example, is going to play a significant part.
And WB is a Polish company?
Exactly.
Okay. So again, I want to come back to the investment in Polish industry in just a second. Now, why has it taken Poland so long to invest in submarines? I mean, one would have thought the Baltic was an obvious vulnerability for Poland, but it's only now that they're investing such large amounts. Talk us through the thinking behind that.
Well, I think that Polish naval forces, that's one of the main criticisms when it came to the modernization of Polish armed capabilities. It has been largely overlooked for the last 30 or so years. It's only been since 2023, 2022 really, where we started initially building up our capabilities. So majority of the warfighting ships, for example, frigates, are of the Soviet era, so they're largely obsolete. It's the same and it's the same issue across the board, really, with any type of naval or Navy-related equipment. And it simply has not really been a priority, because when you think about warfare, before the hybrid warfare on the Baltic Sea began around November last year, where we saw some of these sabotage attempts, for example, being waged by Russia with the cutting of telecommunication links in the Baltic Sea, it hasn't really been paid attention to. It's been air defenses, because when we think of modern warfare, we think of trenches, we think of drones, but we don't really take sea into account. And additionally, I think for Poland, Baltic Sea is relatively small compared to potentially other maritime theatres of war. So it hasn't really been something that we really considered would be a hotspot, for example, for war fighting, really.
Right. Okay. Now, we've talked about the submarines. We've talked about the air defence systems. What about on the ground? I mean, Poland not so long ago entered into contract with South Korea for the procurement of tanks. What's happening on that front?
So I think this is actually one of the areas where we see a lot of cooperation, or a lot of space for Poland to perform really well as well. So as you mentioned, we have purchased a significant amount of Korean K2 tanks, and we've also moved to Polonize them. So some of them will actually be produced in Poland, or a significant proportion of them will be produced in Poland. I believe we purchased around 180 of them initially, and around 180 of them, additional 180 of them, will be produced domestically in Poland. So they will be interoperable with our other tanks. They will be available pretty much immediately for Polish army to train with. But then we also have one aspect where Poland has performed really well, and that is the Borsuk, or the Badger infantry fighting vehicle. They are produced here in Poland, and they have been a very highly sought after commodity. The Polish Ministry of Defense signed a contract with the Badger producer a couple of years ago, and we've signed a contract for 111 of them, I believe. And now we are getting the first tranches of them delivered. So they are a highly sought after commodity, and it is expected that we will also need a lot more of them. So there's also a lot more room to scale up the production, and equally to meet the demand that is currently in place.
I want to explore the issue of exports as well, because we see this whole engineering expertise growing within Poland. But before we get to that, where's all the money coming from, Zuzanna? It's a little bit, it's more than my pay grade anyway.
Right. Well, I mean, the Polish taxpayers, of course, as well. There's been injections from private capital to some extent, but I think a lot of it is now also expected to come from the European Union as well. Poland is expected to be the biggest beneficiary of the EU SAFE, or Security Action for Europe's loans program, which are expected to start coming out in March next year. So Poland is expected to receive around 44 billion out of 100.
Where's the money that's in SAFE at the moment? Where's it come from?
Well, that's, resource pooling from across European countries. It's the EU's money, it's private capital as well.
Okay.
But yeah, it's primarily, the money that the EU has already in its arsenal, if you will.
Okay, it's in its budget. So it's allocated this specifically for military use.
Yeah, for the first time it has ever done so, really.
Okay. And so Poland's got a bit of that. How much is a bit?
44 billion.
44 billion euros?
Yes.
Okay.
So Poland is expected to be the biggest beneficiary, as I mentioned, of SAFE from across its European peers. And it is in itself, a telltale sign of the fact that Poland is, one of the key European countries when it comes to defense to some extent. That's not to say that Poland is performing great in every single aspect, because I think, as I mentioned, there are niches that Poland has performed really well in, and it has been able to identify those, such as, for example, the drone production and anti-drone systems. And similarly, Polish Armaments Group, which is a huge state-owned conglomerate of defense companies in Poland, they've performed really well, and they have some capabilities which are hugely sought after, such as the Thunderbolt portable air defense system. But equally, when it comes to these huge weapon systems that we see Poland needing, such as, for example, the Patriot missile batteries, or, tanks, armaments, stuff like that, Poland doesn't necessarily have a place in that. So I think it's good that the money is going to be there, and we are supposed to get, as I mentioned, a significant amount of it in the years to come. We've identified around 140 projects which will be used to finance this money. All of this is currently classified information, and we expect that around March next. 140
building procurement projects?
140 building and procurement projects. So this will, for example, be projects relating to the Eastern Shield project, and this will be, for example, pieces of infrastructure. This will be dual-use technology.
So Eastern Shield being the defence against any Russian aggression?
Well, not against any Russian aggression, unfortunately, but it is the fortification of the EU's external borders. So we see it in Poland, but equally the Baltic states. So as I mentioned, and the border kind of goes like this down against Russia and NATO's eastern flank. They've also embarked on, building up similar infrastructure projects on their own, and they are all going to be linked up. But these are primarily infrastructure projects. So there's, these huge, fences that have been built up around the borders to kind of make them less porous. It's also the border guards that have been, put in place.
Against migrants that have been placed there by Russia and Belarus, for example. The fences have been. In the last minute or so that we have left, Zuzanna, with all of this investment going into Polish industry, we see a huge expansion of knowledge, skills, and hard capacity. What does it mean for Poland's industry, both within the country, but also as a source of exports for the Polish economy?
Well, within the country, it's obviously great news. I think, as I mentioned, Poland has performed very well in some areas, and that's fantastic news for us. I think it's great that we've managed to find niches that we've identified, and this will be hugely profitable. As I said, there's interest in Polish companies, there's interest for co-production with other European companies, which is exactly what we want. We want this blossoming industrial base in Europe to kind of build up our own sovereignty on the continent. And in Poland as well, it's obviously great. We can, we see Polish companies getting more experience. We see more startups, for example, coming in when it comes to drones, and these are very specific drones, for example, right? They can be used for special forces. So this is all great, but on a whole, I think there is still, Poland will not be able to do defence on its own, and I think that's the key message. Poland
Right.
will not be able to do its own defence on its own.
It has to be a combined
Concentrated effort with its European allies.
With the European and I assume NATO, other NATO countries as well. Zuzanna, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you for taking the time to lay this out for our audience.
Thank you for having me
Have a great day and have a great year.
Thank you too.
Thanks. And that brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, though. Lots more coming up. Goodbye.